The Qatar 1812 kilometers is now over. A brilliant display of racing, action, drama up until the end really had all of us at the edge of our seats. So then, let's look back on the race and let's actually sum up everything that happened from start to finish. The drama began right before the green flag drop with the Sottafraschini stopping in the formation lap. Vernet had a small issue with the electrical power unit but managed to get it restarted just in time for the start. After the green flag dropped, it was Molina who actually surprised everybody. Round the outside of turn 1, took the lead and didn't look back for the rest of the lap 1. He just went. We had to wait a few minutes to see the first real overtakes, with the number 93 Peugeot going from 3rd up to 2nd and then up to 1st, getting past Molina. Muller from then onwards just decided to turn into God pretty much for the rest of the stint and pulled away without looking back up until he gave the wheel. Porsche actually had some kind of civil war between them and Jota, as a lot of contact happened not only at the start but also at the end of the race. We'll actually look at that later. The Porsche pace at the beginning wasn't the best, but as time went on we could actually see them closing in on the Peugeot. Penske and Jota were pretty much side by side for the whole first hour, and it was actually Jota who had the upper hand for most of the first hour, but it was only after the first driver change when they started to back it up and up and up. It was after the first hour that we actually started to see the first struggles. Right at the first pit stop, it was actually Miguel Molina who got a drive-through penalty while being in the top 5 for crossing the white line at the entry of the pit lane. A rookie mistake by the Spaniard. Not only that, but with Toyota qualifying P2, we thought, okay, maybe they were actually sandbagging quite a lot of the prologue. They actually might have some pace. Well, they didn't. The 7 and 8 Toyotas really struggled on the high temperature conditions and were going towards the back up until the second hour, more or less. It was also around the hour and a half mark where the Corvette issues actually started to be visible. They started to drop off the hill with their pace. They couldn't keep up with the rest of the GT3s. I have to say though, the GT3 BOP was actually disastrous. But nevertheless, the Corvette just couldn't keep up with nobody. They were actually slower than Ford in terms of pace. It was an hour 2 where we had the first lead change after Muller took it. He got pushed up by a GT3 arriving into turn 1, and that led the number 6 Porsche take the lead to never look back again. It was a little bit after this that we actually had pretty much the first comical moment from the race. The number 51 Ferrari completely lost his rear wing right before the pit entry, and I gotta say, it looked like a Peugeot 9X8 from the front. Nevertheless, they had to undergo lots of repairs and they dropped down 2 laps, which they went on to not get back anyway. We mentioned how Bernet started in the Sottafraschini before. Well, it was 2 hours in when Serrabaye took in for Bernet, and while being pretty slow at the start, he was actually 4 seconds off, but for some of us, that was actually expected. He turned out at the end of the stint to be less than a second slower. So I do have to point out that Serrabaye actually did a very good job for the Sottafraschini team. Very much at the end, since at the beginning he wasn't too quick. But hats off to the Canadian. We were also starting to see the very serious problems that Lamborghini had with this race pace. They just kept setting laps like the Sottafraschini and they couldn't go either frontwards or backwards. It's true, it is a good thing that they couldn't go backwards, but being 17th in the middle of nowhere for pretty much the whole race, you don't really want that, do you? Toyota was also starting to wake up slowly as the temperatures started to go down. And we also had the number 94 Peugeot going for a very, very risky strategy at the start, but it just was starting to be visible that it wouldn't pay off. It was 2 hours and a half in where we actually started to see in the LMGT3 category that both the number 27 Heart of Racing Aston Martin and the number 46 WRT BMW were looking to have their bronzes quadruple stints. Now, that was to let the pro drivers do the work at the end, and hopefully, if the bronze made any mistakes, that they could pull it back. Talking about GT3, it was very visible how Porsche had pulled a masterclass with the BOP in both Hypercar and LMGT3. While in hypercar, we had a Porsche 1345. In LMGT3, it was actually a monthly 1-2 with the Porsches with a very comfortable lead. From 3rd down to 6th, we had a very close fight in LMGT3 as well between McLaren, Ferrari and Aston Martin, which was eventually won by Aston Martin. The Ferrari hypercar started to wake up again, mainly was the number 83, but it just stayed there. They couldn't actually have any more pace than what they were setting right there and then. Carl Bennett took the wheel of the Isotta Fraschini car after Serravalle had his turn, and he was actually lapping same pace as Serravalle to the surprise of many. However, it was going way too good for the Italian outfit. Firstly, they got hit with a 90-second stop-go penalty for speeding in the pit lane. It was clear that they wouldn't be able to pull the gap back, but hey, it's an endurance race, you just have to make it to the end, right? Well, then they got hit with a 200-second stop-go penalty for a technical infringement. It was only 10 minutes after they had served this penalty that they actually got hit with a very severe engine issue, and they just couldn't fix it in time and retired from the race halfway through. The Porsche number 6 had grown quite a big gap after they took the lead. It was actually Kevin Estre who did most of this job, as he took the car 10 seconds away from the Peugeot and managed to grow it up to 40 seconds in just 2 hours. Brilliant. Ferrari and Toyota last season were fighting for 1st, 2nd or 3rd. This year at Qatar, it was all brand new for them. They were fighting for 9th. One team that we haven't mentioned yet in hypercar is Alpine. They were actually pretty quick and their pace was stable all along the race. They were silent, but they were doing the job, keeping the car in the points early on and midway through. Now, while we were talking about Penske and Jota early on in the race, there is one Porsche team that I didn't mention, Proton, and that's because they were struggling during the whole race. They couldn't keep up with them, not even close. They were on the points for most of the part, arriving at the 6-hour mark, but they could just keep it in the top 10. LMGT3 was yet to take its first victim, and it took it in the way of Porsche. The monthly EMA, the number 91, had an issue after running second most of the race. It had to go into the garage and it lost a lot of laps. And then the other monthly, the number 92, lost the lead to the number 27 Heart of Racing. It was right at the 6-hour mark where the number 94 Peugeot had its first issues, having to go to the garage because of an engine issue. It took them 30 minutes to get back on track, but eventually they had no more. After another round of stops, it was actually the number 54 AF Corsa Ferrari that found itself in the lead of the LMGT3 category, with the number 27 Heart of Racing AMR behind. At the number 54 AF Corsa though was a bronze. That meant that it was a pretty easy task for the gold of the number 27 Heart of Racing machine, Alex Riveras, to just sweep throughout the last corner and take the lead away from the Ferrari. 3 round of stops later though, and the lead will change yet again in LMGT3, with the monthly number 92 retaking the lead from the HOR team. Both Porsches were actually doing a pretty solid job. They were both ahead of the pole sitting number 5 Penske, while the number 6 was pretty much in a world of its own in the lead. There is another team that we haven't talked about yet, BMW. And that's because BMW was actually just fighting against each other. They were their own rivals. They were pretty much in nowhere's land, but they could actually keep up with some teams, just weren't fighting them at all. Ferrari's strategies were actually as weird as the Formula 1 ones. Nobody knew at any point where were they up until the last 30 minutes of the race, when the number 83 was 7th. And even then, the number 50 and the number 51 strategies weren't clear. We had no idea in which position they were actually in. The Porsche number 6 was uncatchable, and the Peugeot number 93 couldn't get closer than 20 seconds. It was only then when carnage started to unfold. First, we had the trip from the number 36 Alpine. Mick Schumacher went to the gravel after contact with the number 54 AF Corsa. We also had another trip to the gravel for the number 5 Porsche of Campbell. Then, the number 87 Lexus went into the gravel again, and that just meant that there was a pool of gravel in one of the corners, which caused a rally mayhem. 22 laps to go, and another hypercar went into the garage. This time, it was the number 38 Jota, which had an electrical issue in the pit lane, fighting for a top 6. one Jota less, but the hopes of the number 12 were pretty strong as they were fighting for second. The leader Porsche number 6 had contact with one of the LMGT3s and lost the number plate on its left side. They actually had to pit to put a quick sticker on, and with 10 laps to go, they left the pit lane having a 40-second margin to the second place Peugeot. And with 3 laps to go, it all started to unfold. The number 93 Peugeot was second. 1.1 seconds behind was the number 12 Jota, and 0.9 seconds behind was the number 5 Penske. The number 12 Jota made a mistake, a pretty big lock-up on one of the corners in Sector 1, only then for the number 5 Penske to make another mistake of its own in the rally corner. In the second to last lap, right as it started, we had drama. The number 93 Peugeot, the first of the wingless wonders, had an engine issue. Nobody could believe it. A so deserved podium on the last race was gone. They couldn't believe it there even. They tried to reset the car, tried to get the engine back up to speed, but it was to no avail as they could only finish 7th crossing the line. The other side of the coin, it was the Porsche number 6. It won in spectacular fashion, and LMDH finally took the win at the World Endurance Championship, and it was actually the number 12 Jota in second who just held off the number 5 Penske in third. With a pretty silent race, but a pretty decent one, the number 2 Cadillac ended up in 4th. The privateer AF Corsa number 83 finished in 5th. In LMGT3, it was Manthey that took the win with the number 92 ahead of the number 27 Art of Racing, the number 777D Station in 3rd, the number 46 BMW in 4th, and the number 54 AF Corsa in 5th. With all this, there you have the race review for the Qatar 1812 kilometers. Thank you so much for watching. Leave a like, subscribe. I'm sorry if the video wasn't good enough. This was really rushed, I know. Some may like this improvised videos, some may not. Let me know in the comments down below, and I will see you next time around. Bye bye.